Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Vox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullroot.
Hey, Skull King Nation, welcome back to another Skull King Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot, I'm your host tonight. And again, we've got another three-headed monster show coming on. Let's go ahead and welcome my brother Justin to the show.
Hello, everybody.
He's got the funny the gamer's headset on tonight.
Yeah. Welcome to a move.
and then also on with us is our buddy Greg. Greg, go ahead and say hi.
Hi, I just have a really stupid sheep-looking headset on.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to go over. There's a lot of news and notes to go over, and then tonight we're also going to be hitting up the fantasy implications from the draft on the NFC North. We'll start with the AFC North and the NFC North. Last week we went over the AFC and NFC East, and so we'll take a look to see what's going on in the news, and then kind of pontificate a little bit about our thoughts on the fantasy implications of a few different draft picks. So first off, let's start off by giving a little shout out to our title sponsor, Vox DFS Firelines at voxdfs.com. They're one of the industry leaders in terms of providing and consulting on DFS lineups, whether it be in NFL, MLB, soccer, NBA, playoffs, doesn't matter. They have the people to write the lines, to help you create your own lines on no matter what platform you're playing, whether it's FanDuel, DraftKings, Yahoo. They're all over the map and can help you build up a bit of a bankroll with your lines. So make sure to go to voxdfs.com. That's VOKSDFS.com. And let them know that the guys from Skull King Football sent you over there. And so let's go ahead and get into the news and notes. Starting off, this is okay. We'll start off with this. Bucs running back Doug Martin avoided serious injury from a car accident he was in. It turns out that the other driver was cited by the police, was at fault. From what I heard, I believe it basically, a couple scrapes and bruises, but nothing overall serious. From what I believe, one of the coaches said that he was actually having one of the better, preseason workouts, which he needed because last year he played like poop and got injured again. So we'll see how much this affects Doug Martin and his ability to make another comeback season.
Yeah, there's not a lot of if you look at the accident report, he was treated for minor injuries. I don't see it as too effective on his abilities other than what he's currently dealing with in kind of the hodgepodge that is the Bucs backfield. Doug Martin was on his way out and then kind of still in, but he's definitely, I would not consider him the lead back based off of how others had done later in the year. So
let's move on. We're going to skip that here. This one's for you, Greg. Jay Cutler officially announced his retirement and will join NFL on Fox since he couldn't make NFL on the field. That's pretty funny. What was it? I believe there was a report that came out that he had actually made calls to the Houston Texans and they refused to pick up the phone. Well, I mean, he's done now, so just what are some of your thoughts, Greg?
Well, I think we probably talked about this just about well before most people in the mainstream sports media would have covered it, was what was the market going to be for Jay Cutler, and did Jay Cutler want to play? And maybe they turned down his phone calls, but he probably expected something early in the season or early in the offseason, didn't get it, made a try, was rejected. But ultimately, I think Fox is going to be really pleased with Jay bringing the same sparkling personality that has been winning over fans in the NFL for years. When you put that kind of chemistry and personality and passion in the booth, I think that it can do nothing but bring fans to the broadcast. And, when you think about the way that NFL ratings fell last year, one of the first things I would do if I were trying to fix it would bring in Jay Cutler. So I think this is a no-brainer hire. They could go nowhere but up for Fox. Things have been going well for Fox as of late. So, I think this is a great move, and I really look forward to seeing him in the booth and just hearing him break down plays and explaining why this pick happened or that pick happened or why somebody fumbled here or why they got sacked there. Or maybe what
he's been doing for the last couple of years in the huddle.
Right. I mean, he's just going to be able to relate directly. I mean, I think, he's going to get the regional games in all seriousness because I think, as I understand, they moved to Tennessee because they have a home there. And so you can see him working over there and, covering games where the quarterback play is, maybe spotty at best. Maybe those are the games that they'll feature him in because he can be a real expert. You probably don't need him calling any of Tom Brady's games. I don't think Jay Cutler has any right to ever say anything about Tom Brady except say, look at how good Tom Brady is. But you can't say that for 2.5 hours straight and keep an audience.
My question is this. Will Jay Cutler become the first grayscale commentator instead of color commentator? Because the only thing that comes into my mind in looking at Jay Cutler is those memes about him having a cigarette in his mouth and pissed all the time. And will he do that in the booth? I don't know. But I don't know. I couldn't avoid that comment there. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect.
Sorry, Jay.
I think it's fantastic. The guy is just – he's done in the NFL. No team was going to sign him because it would just infuriate their fans no matter how bad their quarterback situation was.
All right. Quick side note, Greg. Now that Cutler is retired, what's going to become of Cutler's Corner in your articles?
Well, in the event that one of his broadcasts is ever here in the West, or I actually just tune into one, then I might just break down his commentary of the game and let him have it for that. But the other, I think Cutler's Corner may remain is a piece because the Bears are going to be so bad, we might look at game comparisons of how Cutler might have helped them win a game or at least lose less badly. So I think he will still be there, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi was after he was struck down. He was still in the other episodes. He's just like that ghost. He just shows up late, and he has some kind of message to give. I think Jay will still have that, that role here in the show.
Okay. All right, moving on. CSN Mid-Atlantic's JP Finley believes this should be the year that Jameson Crowder gets to 1,000 receiving yards. Now, let me actually pull up his stats from this past year real quick. We got him right here. What did he finish with last year? Total yards receiving 847 after having 604 the previous year. I mean, I guess it's possible. If you look at, I mean, he's also a bit. He also does a lot of kick returns, punt returns. It may be kind of hard to get that simply because they rely so much on the tight end with Jordan Reed. They have, I guess you could say that he could take over what was supposed to be Deshaun Jackson's role, although Deshaun Jackson could never stay healthy. I don't know. I think with how many receiving weapons they already have, I honestly think in order for Jameson Crowder to hit 1,000 receiving yards, Cousins has to throw for like 5,000 in order for that to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. With the pickup to Pharrell Pryor, though he was a quarterback, he's the better deep threat. Jameson Crowder is currently listed as the number 1 slot receiver. So in 2 wide sets, he won't be on the field currently. I don't know if he's going to get enough time and snaps in order for him to get there unless Kirk Cousins becomes a fantasy football monster and throws for 5,000 yards. I agree.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think predicting 1,000 yards is your basically your trend line analysis of where the guy should end the season, but I don't know that it really accounts for what takes place in the offseason. But I think maybe a move to the slot might help him, actually, and pick up a few more balls here and there. Jordan Reed traditionally has a bit of an issue, obviously, staying on the field. So I don't think it's a totally remote shot, but if he makes it, he'll just barely probably hit the line.
Yeah, he'll probably, if he does it, he'll probably do the same thing that Terrell Pryor did last year when he hit 1,007 yards.
Right.
But if you look at Terrell Pryor hit 1,000 yards with his quarterbacks being Cody Kessler, RG3, and an often injured Josh McCown. So, I mean, the talent is there for him to hit the 1,000 yards no matter who the quarterback is. So, Jameson Crowder, I don't know. So let's move on next. Oh, this is a fun one to debate. The Rams want Tavon Austin to become more of a downfield threat similar to Deshaun Jackson. While he is fast, how big is Tavon Austin? He's 5'9", 174 pounds.
That's 5'9" with 3-inch spikes on, standing on concrete.
He's been quote unquote productive in air quotes, but he's still not. Let's go to his actual rushing and receiving stats. He rushes for more yards than he receives for practically. No, it's okay. So this last year he had 159 rushing yards on 28 attempts and 509 receiving yards. The year before, he had 473 receiving yards and 434 rushing yards. He's really kind of a very, very, very poor man's Percy Harvin.
Mm-hmm.
Is really the best way to put him. He stays pretty healthy, 13 games, 15, 16, 15 games. So he doesn't miss a whole lot of time, which is amazing for how little he is and how, just absolutely clocked he gets in the NFC West. But I don't know. I don't see the talent there to be what Deshaun Jackson was early in his career.
I would agree with you. I don't see it. I think he's one of those guys that, you try to get the quote-unquote ball in space and he can make some exciting things happen. But realistically, in order for him to recognize his talent, he needs to be on a far more talented offense. And the Rams stink, right? The running game stinks. Their quarterback stinks. And the general wide receiving core stinks because they've spent all those years under Fisher working on nothing but defense. And that's basically about it. So I wouldn't blame Tavon Austin. Throw him on the Patriots. He's probably all world. But, if you leave him on the Rams, he's certainly not going to look like Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, the one thing preventing, among others, Tavon Austin from being similar this year to Deshaun Jackson would be the fact that his quarterback options right now are Sean Mannion, Aaron Murray, and Jared Goff. Those are your options at quarterback for the Rams. He's not going to get a deep ball thrown to him. So he can be the deep ball threat, but that doesn't mean he's going to get the ball.
That's a good way to put it. If you think about who were the quarterbacks for Percy Harvin, he had his first year or two. It was the last couple of years of Brett Favre's career in Minnesota, and even then, Favre was still able to sling the ball.
Yeah.
He had a couple of years in Seattle, well, a year and a half, really. A quarter of a year, considering how much time he missed from injury, and then
played 2 games,
and then getting traded halfway through the season the next year.
He returned
with the Seattle
a kickoff in the Super Bowl, which was meaningless points.
Yeah, considering we were already up by 16 at that point. I'm not. We'll move on. I'm not seeing it from Tavon Austin. When asked about what Julius Thomas can add to the offense, Dolphins offensive coordinator Clyde Christensen said 10 to 12 touchdowns. And I will interject, only if Peyton Manning comes out of retirement and is the one throwing it.
Even if it's lame ducks?
Yeah, even if it's lame ducks.
Yeah, he needs to come out of retirement with a flex capacitor to reset his career several years. That's the only way that's happening. I mean, 10 to 12 touchdowns. How long was the contract? 6 years? maybe he's talking about net gain, over time.
Yeah. So I'm not. It's possible, but Tannehill's never had a. Here's the thing: Tannehill's never really had a tight end to work with. Because he had Deion Sims as a tight end, and then Jordan Cameron, who can never stay healthy. So. We've never seen Tannehill really be able to develop a rapport with the tight end. The only person he's ever developed a rapport with is his slot receiver in Jarvis Landry, his safety blanket. That's it. That's the only guy that he has regularly been able to get the ball to, and that's never for touchdowns because Jarvis Landry only runs like a 4.7 40. So, all right, moving on. Keeping with the Dolphins. Offense coordinator Clyde Christensen expects DeVante Parker to have a gigantic year. From what I've heard, DeVante Parker is also completely healthy. He's not dealing with the hamstring issues that he was dealing with going into camp last year. By the end of the year, DeVante Parker was actually somewhat productive. Let me see. I've got it right here. Played in 15 games, but only started in 8 just because he was having problems staying out. 56 receptions for 744 yards, 4 TDs. He was playing pretty well. I don't have a game-by-game breakdown. That's on the other page. So, he's shown that he can have that explosiveness, and that he can be they go up and get him. He's 6'3", 209 pounds. I think he would be better off if he hadn't like another 6 pounds on him. At that 215, 220 range. He may lose a step, but I think he'd be able to muscle a couple more 50-50 balls, in my opinion. So I think he's got the talent. He just needs to stay healthy in order to be able to show it.
Yeah, year 3 tends to be the breakout time frame for wide receivers in the NFL. So I think that lines up with DeVante Parker. I think Sterling Shepard was a little bit of an anomaly with 8 touchdowns in his rookie season for the Giants. And most of the time, even when you look at like a Julio Jones, they really begin to break out in year 3, late year 2, year 3, when they develop the chemistry with the quarterback and those kinds of things. So I would agree that DeVante Parker is primed now that he's healthy. He's had a little bit more chemistry with a quarterback that he could have a big year, yeah.
All right. Let's go next to Brandon Marshall says he wants to play 2 more seasons. Considering how long he's been in the league, I think this year could be the year that he finally actually gets to the playoffs with the Giants. And if you consider the offense that other offensive weapons that are with him out there, with Odell Beckham, the aforementioned Sterling Shepard, and they just drafted, was it Evan Ingram was the tight end they drafted in the first round. They still don't know what they're doing in terms of running the ball, but I think 2 more years would probably fit Brandon Marshall, and he doesn't have to be the number 1 this year. So,
I would agree. I think he could still be productive. I think that Giants offense, especially if they can get a running back, is going to be exceptionally potent. I mean, they have every reason to be. Whether or not Eli delivers is another story. But I think Marshall still has plenty of gas in the tank. I don't think he's anywhere near hitting the wall, physically, especially when surrounded with weapons like that.
All right. Moving on. Rich Cimini of ESPN expects Bilal Powell to be the Jets' lead back. I would honestly be totally on board with this. I don't know if you remember, Greg wouldn't remember this because this is before he was actually on the podcast with us last year. In the preseason last year, I got into a Twitter argument with another podcast. It's about our size. That, in my opinion, Matt Forte would not be productive enough to be a top 20 running back. And man, early in the season, he was sure making me look foolish. But by the end of the season, I was right. Bilal Powell was the most productive running back in the Jets backfield, and Matt Forte got injured and was not in the top 20 at the end of the season. I honestly think Bilal Powell, they both are about the same size, do basically the exact same thing. They're getting paid the exact same thing because they re-signed Bilal Powell for almost the exact same amount that they signed Forte for. I think Bilal Powell is the better running back and should be the lead back for the Jets this year. Justin.
Yeah, I agree. I unfortunately I was with you on the Bilal Powell thing, but due to some other things, just looking back on my roster, I let him go the week before that explosion happened because I was just befuddled by the Matt Forte experience early in the season, who was owned by my brother, and that was aggravating. And so I'm like, fine, I'm getting rid of Bilal Powell. Matt Forte has no end in sight. And then, of course, obviously, the time you let a guy go, you don't have waiver priority to get him back. So I fully agree. It reminds me a little bit of the Chicago Bears situation where Jeremy Langford came in as the lead go-to, and then Jordan Howard took over by the end of the year. So I think Jordan Howard is the go-to in Chicago, just like Bilal Powell is in Jets.
Yeah, I call that Jordan Howard. I got in a fight, Twitter argument over Jordan Howard and Jeremy Langford too. And I told him Jeremy Langford was a piece of garbage that had a couple of lucky games while Matt Forte was out. And that Jordan Howard would take over the backfield on that one too. So, Greg, you had a couple thoughts.
No, I mean, I think that, when you look at the Jets backfield, that Powell's the guy. I mean, I think that, Forte is definitely going to be playing, would be more that second fiddle role. He certainly he had a pretty darn good last year. I mean, I think all things considered. But, he is getting a little bit long in the tooth. He has a lot of miles on those legs. So Powell's the guy, whether or not he's, all that, it's still the Jets. If you have a Jets running back in your backfield like every week, things probably aren't going to bode well for you.
No. All right. So okay, this was interesting. I had sent the I don't know if you guys saw the little picture, the news article I sent to you guys about LeGarrette Blounte today. ESPN's Jameson Hensley believed that the Rams were the best fit for free agent LeGarrette Blounte until today. Let me pull up the actual article so I get this right.
I have the actual points of that tender offer if you want me to read those.
All right, well, let me just kind of go over in general what happened. So the New England Patriots placed a seldom used May 9 tender on running back LeGarrette Blounte. So the basic general basis of this is that under this May 9 tender, Blounte will be a free agent to sign with another club until June 22nd. If he remains unsigned past that date, his rights for the 27 season will belong to the New England Patriots. However, if he does sign with the new team, his acquisition will affect the club's 2018 compensatory pick formula. So if a team manages to sign LeGarrette Blounte, they send over their second round, or was it a second round or a second or third round compensatory pick to New England, so they would get another pick. If they don't, the Patriots have all the rights to sign him for $1.1 million. I think is the basic way it goes, Justin.
Yeah, according to NFL.com, the date is actually July 22nd. I think what they're doing is trying to get something for Blounte on his way out, or trying to stick it to Blounte if he can't find a team really quickly. There are teams that need a running back, but I don't know if they need a slow running back. But this is, once again, creative genius. I'm secretly hoping this comes back to bite the Patriots. and they have like 12 running backs in their backfield. And then they got to drop somebody or put somebody on a practice squad. But look for the Patriots to apparently run the ball a lot this year. But, yeah, it's very rare. I don't know when the last time that this happened was. But, yeah, it's pretty rare. But the Patriots do things differently.
Yeah, Adam Schefter and Eden Rappaport both said that this has almost never been used. It's like only been used like once or twice before. So
leave it to Belichick to know the obscure rule that benefits him.
Yeah, basically. All right. Moving on. That's of really no consequence. Let's go to ESPN's chief reporter Adam Teacher believes Spencer Ware is still likely the starter for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, there are many of us in the fantasy realm that believe that Kareem Hunt will take over that role by the end of the year. This is another thing I'm going to get into a little bit. On Twitter, I actually posted a poll. I don't know if you guys saw this. I posted a poll because when talking about Kareem Hunt, someone was mentioning, which of the running backs drafted this year is going to be the guy who is the number one rookie running back, who's going to get the most rushing yards. And one guy said, just said Dalvin Cook, simply because we've got to pick someone, so I'm going to pick Dalvin Cook. Well, I threw my my hat in the ring, and I said, well, if we're just going to pick someone, why not Kareem Hunt? I think he's one. And I put it this way, I think he's one Spencer Ware concussion away from taking over the backfield. Someone goes, well, I'm not into the whole, predicting injury and everything. And someone else is like, well, he's only had one concussion, hasn't he? I go, yes. However, you get one concussion, it makes it that more likely to get another. And Spencer Ware also had some leg problems last year, and his production after that concussion went absolutely in the toilet. I don't think he had a single game of more than 60 yards rushing after that. I think it was 69. He had a couple games 69. And so I posted this poll, and I think we got about 60 votes on it. So let me pull up the actual poll here. And it said, all right, in terms of predicting, is it bad to predict the possibility of injury when making fantasy football projections? And the three options I gave were, yes, it's bad juju. 2, no injury history matters. Or 3, injuries are too unpredictable. 74 votes on this. Guess which one won?
Yes.
No, injury history matters. It is not a bad thing to predict injuries. Now, some people, again, we're thinking that it may be bad luck, and injuries can be unpredictable. But when you consider that we are making predictions on one of the most violent sports, I mean, yes, you've got helmets and everything involved. It's not MMA, it's not boxing, but we're talking about a violent sport where there's a lot of hitting. You have to take into account injury history, especially guys that get injured over and over and over again. This is the reason why I would take David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott over Le'Veon Bell. I would even take a couple wide receivers over Le'Veon Bell, because Le'Veon Bell has been injured 3 times in the last 4 years and been suspended once. And it's the same with Julio Jones. I love Julio Jones, but I would take Brown and OBJ over Julio Jones because he continues to have foot and ankle problems. Greg, any thoughts?
No, I agree. I think if you're not, predicting injury, I think you just have to look at the likelihood. And some players are just more likely than others. History shows that. Injuries are only unpredictable with otherwise healthy players. You could not have predicted Tom Brady's knee injury the year it happened. That is unpredictable. But, predicting that, a guy like, Sam Bradford has a good potential of being injured, or Tony Romo last year, like I said in the preseason, is a good chance of being injured, not making it through. You're not going out on a limb. There's a substantial probability to that happening with with certain players. So, I mean, I would agree with you on Hunt probably ended up being the guy before too long in Kansas City. Me personally, I mean, I would think, Cook or Fournette are the front runners to be the top productive, running back this season, just, based on, where they're starting this season on the depth chart and things like that. But I think Hunt could be a very productive back this year.
Yeah, there's a reason why you have to account for injuries, and it comes from a term that's a fantasy football term. There's a reason why you get a handcuff, is because in certain positions like running back and receiver, more prone to injury, the football rules are not necessarily written to protect them like they are quarterbacks. You need to have or at least be aware of someone's injury history when drafting them. And we'll obviously cover that when we get closer to draft time and putting together mock drafts and those kinds of things. But obviously, injury history plays a factor.
Okay. Yep. I'm glad I have people on my side that see things the way I did. All right. Here we go. Free agent Christine Michael will visit with the Patriots because they need another running back.
I was hoping we were going to get to this. I thought we were going to get it right after talking about LeGarrette Blounte, but I had the Patriots depth chart as of right now, and this does not include the off chance that Christine Michael gets signed or that LeGarrette Blounte comes into the picture. But they have Dion Lewis, James White, Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead, DJ Foster, and Brandon Bolden. And then another draft pick, LaShawn Daniels Jr. They have 7 already on the roster, and that's with Christine Michael visiting and LeGarrette Blounte being tendered. So they potentially have, like I said, 9 running backs on their roster next year. Someone's sitting or getting traded.
Yeah, he's not going to make the team.
not one of those players on that team can you legitimately cut in favor of Christine Michael. Forget it. The guy's had his chances. He sucks.
Pretty much. All right. Didn't want to take too much time on that one. So interesting. The Vikings and new wide receiver Michael Floyd strike a 1-year deal worth roughly $1.5 million with incentives up to $6 million. The person that this affects the most is Laquan Treadwell. He's not going to see the field. I mean, because they just re-signed Adam Thielen, and Stefon Diggs is by far better. He's still by far a better receiver than Treadwell is. Plus, they also drafted Stacey Coley out of Miami. And my personal favorite on this team, who's probably won't see the light of day, is Moritz Boehringer. He's the German kid that got drafted in the 6th round last year. 6'4", runs a 4.3 40. Treadwell's not going to see the light of day. It's going to be Thielen, Diggs, and Floyd. Honestly, as long as Floyd can stay healthy and can keep his hands open to catch the ball and make sure the ball stays in his hands, he'll be one of the more productive wide receivers there.
Yeah, but he had issues at the end of the year when playing for the Patriots. Malcolm Mitchell replaced him, and he's lower on the depth chart than Treadwell is for the Vikings.
And I think we just lost Justin.
He's frozen in time. But we are still here. But he's with us here in spirit, as you can see.
Sure. So
contemplation. I would say that, as far as the Floyd signing could be a real good thing for the Vikings. He has all the potential that's out there, but his biggest issue, having seen him here in Arizona, was consistency. The alcohol issues have followed him since Notre Dame. I watched him his entire career there, so it's a great bargain, if he ends up doing what he is capable, of doing.
All right, let's move on to next. We already talked. Okay, we talked about the tender on LeGarrette Blounte. Minor stuff. Former 49ers and Jaguars quarterback Blaine Gabbert signing a one-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. This is kind of interesting. A Nashville man is accusing Tajay Sharp of beating him while teammate offensive guard Sebastian Tretola served as a lookout. Tajay Sharp was pretty much fantasy irrelevant last year, so who knows? I mean, it doesn't really matter so much in terms of his playing time. I think that means more for Taywan Taylor taking over a slot role if Tajay Sharp's going to have some legal issues. So.
Yeah, Sharp was supposed to be a stud last year, produced nothing. So, he's one of these guys who's going to be, fast out of a job.
Interesting thing, the reason that Tajay Sharp apparently went off on him was because the guy made a comment about Tajay Sharp getting less playing time because they drafted Corey Davis. So apparently that's why Tajay Sharp went off and beat the snot out of the guy. So, according to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, the Vikings plan to establish a committee at running back during training camp, which does not bode well for, I believe it was Dalvin Cook who they drafted. They've also got Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon, Bishop Sankey. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. He's been pretty much unproductive ever since he was drafted out of Washington. So that does not speak well of anyone right now. It's pretty much anyone's job right now. So that's another sit and wait. And looks like out of a newspaper in New York, Ralph Vacchiano suggests that Quincy Enunwa could be the Jets' #1 receiver this season. I could see that being possible, considering that Eric Decker, who knows how healthy he's going to be. He's also, he's in his 30s, and his body may be breaking down to the point where he's not going to be able to keep it up anymore. He's been so productive for so many years, but I can understand with having, I want to say it was a hip surgery and a shoulder surgery this last year, how he may not be able to quite hold up. And it would be interesting to see how Quincy Enunwa could do actually taking over that role and actually being called the #1. So. All right, anything else from you guys?
Nothing on the news and notes.
All right, well, let's go ahead and hit up. Let's dive through these. Let's hit up the AFC North fantasy implications. And we'll do these in alphabetical order, starting with Baltimore. The only significant fantasy impact from the Ravens draft picks were adding to the offensive line. Pretty much that's it. Everything else is on defense. So hopefully they'll be able to protect Joe Flacco a little bit more, to provide running lanes for Terrence West and Kenneth Dixon. And we'll see what the addition of Danny Woodhead can do for that offense. Other than that, that's it for Baltimore.
Pretty much.
Moving on, Cincinnati. Now, this is where we had a lot go on. So, the kind of going over my notes, Cincinnati, the Bengals made Andy Dalton a happy man. They added John Ross, the speedster wide receiver out of Washington, to a group that already includes A.J. Green, second-year receiver Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Eifert at tight end. If you're going to play in leagues with return yards, Ross could be a very productive guy. Being a kick returner. He didn't do so much of the punt returning at Washington. That was more Dante Pettis. But in terms of kick returning, that could definitely be something that's on Ross's plate. And then they also drafted the interesting character in Joe Mixon, who could fight for playing time with Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill.
Playful word choice.
Rumors are that Hill may not be retained once his contract is up due to his inconsistent play these last couple years. From what I'm hearing, it's Jeremy Hill's job it's Gio Bernard will most likely be the lead back with Joe Mixon mixing in. Wow.
You're on fire.
And Jeremy Hill will most likely be the odd man out in this backfield. Because Joe Mixon can basically do everything that Gio Bernard can. And so if Gio Bernard were to go down, Joe Mixon can catch the ball out of the backfield and run it, unlike Jeremy Hill, who can not catch the ball out of the backfield. So any thoughts on that, Greg?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Mixon certainly went higher than I thought he would in the draft, but I think he is a legitimate threat to take over that role. Pretty early on. I guess I could have used a pun there on the legitimate threat, but I think that he's definitely probably going to ultimately be the guy there in very short order. And so I mean, good pickup. The Bengals really did a lot to try to add to that offense between Ross and Mixon, and they're going to try to make another go of it in a very winnable division.
Yeah, well, let's also remember that Baltimore isn't averse to going, to picking up troubled players. Jeremy Hill.
You mean Cincinnati?
Or I'm Cincinnati. Jeremy Hill, before he got drafted out of LSU, sent letters to all 32 teams explaining the multiple arrests he had in the few years that he was at LSU. So the Bengals are not afraid of drafting troubled guys with troubled backgrounds. I mean, we've seen that again with Jeremy Hill just a few years ago. So, they're willing to take the risk, and we'll see how it helps their offense.
There's three teams you land with in that situation. It's Dallas, it's Oakland, and it's Cincinnati. Those are the three teams that specialize in this stuff.
Yep.
And just on a side note, I think Andy Dalton's primed for a big year with the additional weapons. I don't think he has any excuse not to make a deep run in the playoffs this year. So,
other than the fact that he can't win in the playoffs?
Other than the fact that his head coach is Marvin Lewis, that might be the biggest problem.
That could be it too. All right, going to Cleveland. The Browns had a ton of picks to work with, but used many of them to rebuild their defense. They had drafted, I want to say in last year's draft, they had drafted like 6 wide receivers. Tight end David Njoku is a very athletic player. Watching some of his game tape of what he was able to do at Miami, the guy is an athletic freak. He actually was a track and field star, and then then the coaches managed and was trying to be a wide receiver, and they actually convinced him to put on a little more weight to become a tight end. But he was a high jumper for Miami's track and field, and so the guy is very athletic. And he'll be put into action right away because as soon as they drafted him that same night, the Browns told Gary Barnidge, "See you later." The Browns also drafted offensive linemen to bolster up the line, and then they took DeShone Kizer as a project pick, who very well could end up starting this year. What's
your over/under on DeShone Kizer starting percentage-wise?
As in how many games?
No, percentage of okay, so how many the question is day one, what's your percentage of DeShone Kizer being the starter at Cleveland?
I'm not all that confident in this, but I will say 30%.
See, I'm going to take the over. Because the guys in front of him are named Kevin Hogan and Cody Kessler. And Brock Osweiler. Can't forget about him. But if you're going to take a guy in the second round, I think he's got a shot at being on the roster or being the starter.
I think he has a shot at it. I'm not totally. Again, going back to the Brock Huard interview. I mean, I've watched his tape and kind of gone over some of the notes that Brock Huard said about him. He was a third round project, multi-year project that. While he has some awareness in the pocket, he is a pocket passer who played in a pro-style offense. His arm is a cannon, but it's a loose cannon. And he's just, I don't know, he's too inconsistent. He can blow up the cruddy teams, but when he plays against good competition, he struggles. Greg, you're the Notre Dame guy. How much did you actually see of DeShone Kizer, and do you think that he can do anything? Do you think he'll be the starter, or do you think they'll actually have him sitting?
I don't see him, certainly not any time in the first half of the season, seeing the field. He's one of these guys that I would think if he's going to see the field, it's going to be in the last quarter of the season, in a season where all else is lost. But if the Browns are smart, which is questionable based on history, but if you look at their draft, they had a hell of a draft. As a Bears fan, I'd much rather have all of their picks than any of ours, but we'll forget about that. If they're smart, he's not going to see the field this season. If they're just quasi-stupid, then he's going to see he'll see playing time in the last quarter of the season. If they're kamikaze, suicidal, he gets on the field early, and that's going to destroy his career. Brady Quinn shouldn't have seen the field that early. They didn't have the people there to support him. Not that he could have been a good guy, but he didn't have any of the coaching or the talent around him to succeed. Right now, the Browns, questionable whether or not they do either with a player that needs this much work. So let these other three guys get their heads kicked in, or two guys, and only start him if you have not another healthy body to run out on the field.
All right. Moving on to Pittsburgh. Some of my notes. Injury and suspension could provide sooner than expected fantasy value from a couple of the Steelers draft picks because of who the Steelers have. Juju Smith-Schuster, who was drafted by the Steelers to be a wide receiver, will be battling Sammy Coates for the third wide receiver spot. Sammy Coates struggled with drops a lot last year. Had some big games where he'd have 3 catches for 150 yards, but also had 2 drops in the same game. And who knows? Smith-Schuster could see himself moving up the ladder if Martavis Bryant can't stay out of trouble now that he's been reinstated. And
That's
then
an almost certainty.
just make sure LeGarrette Blounte isn't visiting.
More puns.
Oh, that's how Le'Veon Bell got suspended. Was him and LeGarrette Blounte got pulled over and had marijuana in the car. So, Big Ben has been fighting off injuries every year, but don't look to Josh Dobbs to be an immediate backup quite yet. They still have who's their backup there?
Landry Jones.
Who just signed a 2-year deal for like $5 million. $0 guaranteed. So they'll be ready to cut him loose at any time. And Le'Veon Bell is a freak of an athlete, but will be on the top of many draft boards this fall. However, due to injuries and suspension, Bell has only had one season in which he has played 16 games. One season in which he has played 16 games. Power runner and third round pick James Conner could find himself in a position to carry the load if Le'Veon goes down. James Conner actually was out of the University of Pittsburgh. And so it's kind of cool that he's kind of the hometown kid that got drafted by the Steelers. He's a decent power back that could find, he very well could play the Williams role from last year. So,
but my real money's on Nile Davis. Sorry.
That's the safe play. That's the safe play.
Over under on Nile Davis being on 3 teams this year.
I would say that you have. I don't know if you could get another 3 teams out of them.
2.5.
Okay, so 2.5 teams. I'll take the over on 2.5.
I'll take the under because he'll get 2 teams, and then no one else will pick him up. So, yeah. All right, moving over to the NFC North. Hey, we start off with is it your former team now, the Bears, Greg? Is it, or are you still somewhat attached to them?
I still haven't reconciled where I'm at. I'm pretty much, I don't know. I'm still in shock that they actually did what I thought that they wouldn't do in the worst case scenario, and they did it. And so the team has been doomed to not – they don't have a chance to compete for that division in at least 5 years' time. Not a chance. There's not a snowball's chance in hell. There's been so much damage done in the time of Ryan Pace that I actually do believe that he is a plant for the Packers. That's the only thing that's logical. This is the dumbest pick I've ever seen. There was absolutely – if you were going to make this pick and you want to do a stupid pick for a guy who would have been there, fine. But then don't spend the money on all these other quarterbacks and just keep Hoyer and run him out there, or just don't spend the money on all the other holes you have. But they didn't do that. So they filled none of the holes, and then they get this Trubisky guy who, for God's sake, John Gruden had to explain to him what a hard count was. Did you see that on Gruden's QB camp?
Unfortunately, I did.
At least 70% of the women I date know what a hard count is. This guy's an idiot. He's an absolute idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's played a handful of games. He's got barely more time playing football than my son has in flag football. He's not a franchise quarterback. The last couple of years of picks, the last few, we have Kevin White and Trubisky. You want to know some names that you're not going to see in the record books for all-time touchdown connections on any team ever? It's going to be Trubisky to White. So this is absolutely dreadful. Horrible pick. Will he see the field this year? Yes. He's got a better chance than Kaiser of seeing the field, less than Watson, and I would say less than Mahomes for sure. So he's number 2 here in playing time because Watson's going to start. But Trubisky's going to get in probably in that last quarter of the season. Glennon is going to get absolutely murdered behind that line with no weapons. He's 6'7". He can't move. So he's going to go down at some point. Even if Glennon otherwise plays well and surprises everybody, right? If he surprises everybody, he's still, I don't think, going to last a season behind that line. He's just going to get beaten up too bad. Sanchez is going to be the quickest hook anybody's ever seen to get Trubisky out there. So I think you at least see Trubisky get time in the last quarter of the season with no injuries. Because once the Bears are mathematically eliminated, which technically happened when the schedule was released and this draft pick happened, but when they're because you have to play games. So whatever. They're going to play some games, and when they're eliminated sometime around, I don't know, week 9, then the chance will start to go ahead and get this stiff out there. If they're smart, they won't play him, but I can see where it ends up happening.
All right. Moving on to some other picks from the Bears. They also drafted tight end Adam Shaheen, who's a small school product, I want to say, out of Ashland College. Mm-hmm. That he can catch the ball, but is also known for his ability to help block along the line of scrimmage, which I think is one of the reasons why they got him to, 1, help along the line of scrimmage, and 2, their other tight end. Who's their other tight end, Greg?
The oft-insured clown from what is his
Miller?
name? Yeah, Miller.
Yeah, Zach Miller.
See, because you've had the Zach Millers and the Heath Millers out there. The Bears have the crappy one of the two. It's Zach.
Well, and there was 2 Zach Millers also. There was one that was with the Seahawks, and then there was the other Zach Miller that the Bears had. So
yeah, the Bears have the even crappier one. They have the 3rd crappiest Miller.
Okay. They also drafted an interesting pick. They also drafted a running back in Tarik Cohen, which honestly, if you want to just have some fun watching some highlight film, go to YouTube and look up Tarik Cohen, or also look up The Human Joystick. His highlight film is outrageous. Here's the deal. He is a little guy. I want to say he's another one of those like 5'9", 5'10" guys that only weighs 190 pounds or something. But his ability to make defenders look stupid is ridiculous. He's not going to take over for Jordan Howard. He's going to be more of a 3rd down receiving back. Could see some production as a special teams player. So that's maybe something to look at, depending on what kind of work he gets in the preseason. He could be an eventual special teams guy if you have special teams points in your league. So moving on, Detroit. The Detroit Lions grabbed some interesting picks in this draft. Many assumed that they would look at adding a running back. They didn't. Instead, Detroit tried to bolster up their defense. They added a few key offensive pieces. Kenny Golladay, who we interviewed his play-by-play announcer from Northern Illinois, Bill Baker. Gallatie's a tall, athletic, speedy wide receiver. He makes catches over defenders. He can outrun them on the seam route. He did a lot of just like 5-yard stop routes, get him the ball in an open zone, and then just let him work his way out there. That could be an interesting fit in there with Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. Jones working. I think that Gallatie could actually take over the deep role from Jones. He's bigger, more athletic. And then they also added to the tight ends with Michael Thomas, who another guy to watch his game film. This guy is huge. As a tight end, he's 6'6", 270 pounds. He finished the season last year with 45 catches, 460 yards, and 16 TDs. Like 1 out of every 3 catches was a touchdown. So he could be a huge, kind of a touchdown only type of league. Could be a good pickup, a value pick.
So he came in at Kelvin Benjamin weight?
except he's also 3 inches taller and carries that weight a lot better.
And an actual tight end.
Yeah, and he's an actual tight end. He's not a wide receiver that's now the size of a tight end. All right, moving on to Green Bay. The Packers were desperate for defensive back help. Oh, boy, were they ever. And so they addressed that early. As far as fantasy goes, it'll be interesting to see the running back battle between converted wide receiver Ty Montgomery and the draft picks Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. There are some that believe that Aaron Jones is the most talented running back in that running back room now. Head coach McCarthy has already stated that Ty Montgomery is their starter. It'll be interesting to see how he holds up. He missed a few games last year, not only from injury, but also dealing with fatigue from the sickle cell trait issues that he had. So, I can see either Jamal Williams or Aaron Jones, if either one of them could really step up, maybe taking over that backfield from Ty Montgomery if he can't stay healthy. Or they could just be good guys to watch for DFS plays when Montgomery is out. So, that's pretty much all they had. Everything else, they're pretty much set with their wide receivers with Adams and Cobb and Nelson. So, and then finally, Minnesota. The Vikings were hoping to have found their running back in the future in Dalvin Cook, but as we've just seen in the news and notes, they're looking to do a running back by committee. They also added to their offensive line by drafting one of the top centers in the draft to help up there. And then we also know that they signed Michael Floyd. In terms of the running backs, I mean, do either of you guys actually see someone stepping out, or do you think that this between say Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, or do you think this will kind of stay as a committee thing? Let's start with you, Greg.
I don't see what the committee is involving Jerick McKinnon. I mean, he had his chance in an incredibly thin backfield, and the result of his hard work was the signing of one Latavius Murray and the drafting of one Dalvin Cook. So if there's ever been a third wheel in a situation, it is definitely Jerick McKinnon. So I think their backfield's gotten a whole hell of a lot better. I really like Minnesota. Their ability to contend in the North this year better than last year is a result of the moves that they've made at running back, and if Floyd can produce. Dalvin Cook could certainly take that job, from Murray, but it's tough to say. Obviously, Latavius has some nagging things that seem to happen for him health-wise. Productivity seems to be a question at times. Cook is one of those guys who's – I would call him a dark horse, but he's got to be one of those guys who's got a chance to get a Rookie of the Year nod, depending on how his playing time, levels out versus, say, a Fournette.
I like Dalvin Cook's chances better than Latavius Murray's chances, and here's why. Last year, Latavius Murray ran behind a fantastic offensive line for the Raiders, and did not produce very well. Now he's going to a team, though they did bolster their offensive line this year, struggled to let anybody run with any significance last year. Once again, Dalvin Cook is an incoming first-year player. He's got a little bit more speed than Latavius Murray. I think he's a little bit more versatile. I would say that Dalvin Cook, not the first couple of weeks, but I think by week 6 will probably, though still a committee, will probably be getting 50% of the carries. Latavius Murray probably getting 35, and McKinnon getting in there every once in a while, maybe to blast at the goal line.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I see McKinnon as more of a kind of a third down, catch the ball out of the backfield type of guy, just because he's a smaller guy. He doesn't have a whole lot of girth on him. So, yeah, I can see it going either way. You know, they may stick with Latavius Murray just because of the experience over Dalvin Cook, or they could just decide, hey, this is Dalvin Cook, just let him go with it. So. All right. I think that's all we've got for tonight. Anything else from you guys?
Not for me. I think I've said quite enough.
I do have one thing. I do kind of want to do a little bit of a shout out, or not a shout out, but just kind of a mention today on the news on ESPN. Longtime ESPN announcer Chris Berman's wife passed away. So just want to say, as a fan, my thoughts and prayers are with him during this tragic time. We wish him the best going through this. But big fan of Chris Berman as a football announcer, and so sad to see that news today. So that's kind of just one thing I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that if you guys hadn't. So yeah, you know, again, Boomer, our thoughts and prayers are with you as you go through this tough time. You know, we can't imagine what you're going through right now. So, all right, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and call it. For us, call it a night. This podcast will be up and running Thursday morning. So. Again, we want to thank you all for taking your time to listen to the Skull King Football Podcast. Again, my name is Ryan Scalder, and with me tonight we're Greg and Justin. We hope you guys enjoy it, and we look forward to bringing another show next week where we go over the fantasy implications of the NFC and AFC South, as well as whatever news and notes come out this next week. So, again, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys later. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.